Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg, as always. And Greg, we have a bracket. Big fan of this day, in particular, Selection Sunday. We have a bracket in hand. We'll be reading off our picks. I'll hold it up for the screen here in a little bit. How are you doing, buddy?
I just shared on my Twitter. If you haven't seen the Emperor's New Groove, it's an excellent film. My favorite Disney film. So don't hate me. But there's at the beginning when he's talking about Cuscotopia, he hugs Cuscotopia and he says, "I'm so happy," and I'm hugging the bracket right, like metaphorically hugging the bracket right now. Like Christmas is really like Thursday and Friday this week, but like we're Christmas Eve right now.
Oh yeah, the anticipation is great. I will say it was a little bit weird not seeing Greg Grumble on the selection show. I'm gonna have some thoughts and prayers for him as he's going through a family health matter, is what they said. It was a little bit disappointing to not have him there for reading off Stetson and Grambling making the tournament for the first time in school history. We always love seeing those new schools and some weird schools make it. So, that is something we'll keep him in thoughts and prayers as we move forward. Also, Greg, just kind of giving people a kind of a preview of what the show will be. So we're going to start off talking about the teams that made it, teams that didn't, our beefs with the committee, all that stuff. If people have too much of that, I know I sometimes get overwhelmed with hearing that talk. If people get too overwhelmed with that, you can skip a little bit ahead and you get to our bracket picks. We'll go do one region at a time, and then we'll pick our final four at the end and pick our champion at the end too. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. And as is tradition with March, you always fill out your bracket. For me, I always fill it out and I end up hating it because I just like there's so many teams you got to pick, lose. So many teams you're like I thought this team was going to the final four, and then you're like, oh, I can't pick them to go to someone else I like better. So it's a lot of fun. I can't wait for it. Let's get things started with the committee, Greg. There was, I think, this might be the worst job the committee has ever done. Now, let me be honest. I'm a little bit below average bracketologist on the bracket matrix thing. So, I'm not the best at predicting the tournament. I do my best. It's fun, whatever. But there seemed like there was teams that maybe should have made it who didn't make it. There were seeds that were wrong, teams that were underseeded, a couple teams that were overseeded in a way that it just doesn't make sense. And we know it's a committee made up of several people, so it's different people coming together. We know that there's different metrics you look at. You're going to be someone... you can't be someone who just follows one metric, so there's going to be inconsistencies where they have one team who has 5 quad 2 losses, like Clemson being a 6 seed, and other people who don't have that many losses being an 8 seed or something like that. So there's definitely things that happen like that. But Greg, this was I think a pretty bad tournament selection. Good thing they can't ruin the tournament, but they ruined the selection process, I think.
Well, it didn't take but 5 seconds for me to turn on Twitter and the Twitter machine and see people already talking about expanding the tournament. So it is possible for us to ruin the tournament.
That's it.
But not today. So the only thing I'll say, Joe, and whoever stayed tuned in, to the selection show after they finished the bracket, got to hear Charles McClellan, the committee chair, and I did listen to another interview that Matt Norlander did with him. The one thing he kept echoing was they did put an emphasis on that non-conference strength of schedule. That's one of the reasons that Iowa State got bumped, not even to the top 2 seed, but I think they were the 3rd or 4th 2 seed. Joe, you got it in front of you, but so if what we get out of this is maybe teams committing to playing a better non-conference schedule and less like let's try and manipulate the net, then that's worth it. But I mean, there's like that being said, like I'm still like if that's what you want to go with, I guess fine. But like there's still some of these things I'm like you look at some of these seedings, you're just like okay, like fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off with saying I think if you have a formula like the net, which we do not like, we've talked about that pretty specifically, you still have to kind of use it, right? Like, if this is what you're going to be, this is the most important thing to them in the committee, and it seems like it didn't matter. So that to me is messed up, even though we don't like the net. I will also say that I think there were teams that I thought would be in that just got snubbed. Maybe teams that I was like, oh, they're going to put this team, even though I wouldn't put this team in. Like Texas A&M, I put in my final bracket. That many quad 3 losses. How many chances do you get? So I'll say this. The first thing I'll start with is the Mountain West got killed seeding wise because of the manipulation of the net stuff we talked about. New Mexico wouldn't have been in the tournament if they didn't win the conference tournament. Seems a little bit harsh. I think they were outside of the bubble before they won a game or two, and then in the conference tournament, and then obviously after they won the tournament, I thought like, okay, they'll probably be like a 10 seed now. There was. I'm just looking at the bracket. We're going through this, Greg. A team like Oklahoma missed the tournament. They didn't really have any bad losses. It's not like the most egregious thing in the world, but I thought they, 4-12 quad one and then no losses otherwise. Like I think the rest of the conference manipulating in the net hurt them in this regard because there was no wins, no losses outside of the quad one, and you still get penalized for losing all this the tough games that were net teams. So those were the two things that surprised me the most. I think was the New Mexico stuff coming out, and then Oklahoma being left out at net 46, 4-12 quad one, but nothing else on the record, nothing else on the resume that's like makes you think that would not be a tournament team. Not egregious, not going to be like, hey, expand the tournament. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to say just a little bit weird.
Yeah, Joe, I saw some talk on Twitter, and it just maybe it's my algorithm because I live in Dayton now, but I saw some comments on Dayton's resume and how they're a 7 seed, and somebody pointed out like they have no wins over non automatic qualifier tournament teams. Mm-hmm. So they beat St. John's, they got left out. They beat Cincinnati, they got left out. They should have been left out. They beat SMU. Those are their 3 quad one wins, and they're sitting at a 7 seed and they're 23rd in the net. If you're telling me that you got a formula where you can have 3 wins like that and they're like the superior, the top, then there's something wrong with the net and something wrong with the quad system, because those wins are what got them into the tournament, and none of those teams are in the tournament. Now they hung with Houston in their MTE, so like I guess that counts for something. But I mean, this kind of shows you, like, obviously, happy. My wife's happy, personally, because they're in the tournament. They go 7 seed. I think they got a rough matchup because they got one of these underseeded Mountain West teams that we talked about. They very well may lose that game, and I'm not really hanging on Anthony Grant if they do. But I mean, you could pick a list out. The one that stuck out to me. So obviously, the first one that popped up when we were watching the show is FAU at an 8. The one that just threw me through a loop was the Texas A&M seed. I was like, good Lord, like, okay, we don't have time to go through to revisit everyone's resume and look at everyone's non-conference strength of schedule and whatever and blah blah blah. But like, that's just one that is just like, obviously we've talked about that team a lot, but like, okay, like. It's just maybe this is going to get teams to schedule differently. I don't know, but some of these decisions were just, you said it's the worst job. I mean, definitely there's just things that just are wild and out of left field.
Yeah, that to me was there's just so many things where it just turned out to be like there was no egregious this team got left out. Like, I would love to see Indiana State in the tournament, but you look at the resume, not the greatest. It's still like, how does the metrics work where FAU, we're criticizing them all year because their only good win is Arizona, right? How are they at 8? And then you look over at Texas A&M, like you said, Greg, and they're got all those losses. They do have more weight. Like, their resume is more built on, hey, we've beaten really good teams. They're a 9. Like, I get the resumes are always going to happen like that. It just seems that weird that, like, FAU, arguably, I think in other years would have been left out of the tournament. Or maybe if they didn't have the name that they did either. So, I don't know. That just seemed odd to me. But that's, hey, we got the bracket now. Again, hopefully this will, as you said, incentivize teams who see Texas A&M like, hey, let's take some chances non-conference schedule, and then if it doesn't work out, at least maybe we'll have a chance to make the tournament still. That would be the best thing for the sport of college basketball.
Just one other thing, Joe. You already mentioned Indiana State, but we have the new that's the new bar, 28th in the net is the best net team to be left out. I think we discussed previously it was NC State at 31, or it was NC State or someone. I can't recall who. I know it was a red team. But that is the new bar. I just hope we get maybe, again, the non conference strength schedule maybe teams will change from that. Maybe we get some workshopping on this net. Maybe it's not ready in time for next year where they do some tweaking to it, but this is obvious that if it's your metric, it's the NCAA evaluation tool, and you're not adhering to it. No one's saying that you need to all right, this metric is going to line up with what your seed is, in the tournament. It's obviously good that they would look over a host of things, but if you're just going to almost, in some cases ignore this, then that should tell you that your own thing needs reworking.
Yes, I do love what Kim English said after Providence missed the tournament, saying the analytics are bullshit. I agree with him on that. It did seem like they did kind of figure it out, and like the teams manipulating the net did get moved down. But I will say, I'm much more of a person who, and I think we said this a couple weeks ago, so I won't belabor the point, but I care about who you beat, not how you play. I don't care at all. So hopefully, again, this can create some change in the selection process as we move forward. And hopefully the changes that are added is not, hey, let's add more teams to the bracket, because it's already perfect, and everyone has a chance to plan it. So, all right, let's get to our picks, Greg. Now, the way I figure we do this, we will go down and pick the first round games from one region, and then we will go through and pick the rest of the games kind of all at once to make it a little bit easier. Otherwise, we're just talking about hypothetical matchups that may not happen. So let's start with our picks of the first round games we know are going to be out there. We'll start it off in the East region. Stetson Hatters, got to see them live in person. I don't think they're beating UConn, Greg.
I'm picking UConn. You want to spend 30 minutes talking about this game, or you want to just move on?
Just need an answer. That's all. We're good. And then we have Florida Atlantic, who we mentioned being a little bit maybe overseeded, and then Northwestern as the 9 seed. Greg.
This is the committee making up for underseeding FAU last year by giving them a real nice seed that they probably didn't deserve this year. I'm doing this live, so I watched the selection show and then just turned everything off and said I'm just gonna, of course I looked at Twitter, but I'm gonna pick this stuff live with Joe. So gut feeling here is Northwestern.
Okay, I'm going Northwestern as well. Same bracket so far. This is, for me, more about FAU having to turn it on for these games to be good, and I don't know if you can rely on picking a team like that, talented enough where they could probably even beat UConn the next round. Obviously, they went to the Final Four last year, but if they don't flip the switch and actually turn it on, then Northwestern could kill them. Next game up, we have one of Greg's Mountain West teams, San Diego State, going up against UAB. Andy Kennedy gets the job done in the AAC tournament, their first year in the league.
You might end up seeing this as the 12-5 is always one of the the hot matchup picks for an upset. And obviously, we talk about which team is playing their best ball. Obviously, UAB goes on a nice run, wins the AAC tournament. I'm going to go with San Diego State here, Joe. One other oddity that I think Seth Davis mentioned on the selection show, we got San Diego State, FAU, and UConn all in the same region. 3 of last year's 4 Final Four teams. Just doesn't mean anything. Each year exists in its own universe. Just funky. So I'll go with San Diego State though in this one.
I'm going San Diego State as well. They were one of the Mountain West teams I liked from the start, was San Diego State and Boise. I'm going to ride with them on this one. Think they had some hiccups in Mountain West play, but it is a tough league. As much as I'll make fun of them for making the net more favorable for themselves. Next game up, we have Auburn and Yale. Auburn just won the SEC tournament. Yale just won the Ivy League tournament on a pretty awesome buzzer beater.
Yeah, our resident Ivy League expert, Joe DiTilio, told us about this team early in the year, in fact, preseason. So I still can't quit Auburn. Auburn's one of those teams that I liked early in the season. Just gonna go with Auburn, but I'm curious to see, because I know you obviously talked about Yale, but I can't see you picking them in this game. Obviously, things are gonna happen. It's March Madness. It's weird. We're gonna get some weird results, but what are you thinking, Joe?
Going Yale. Mentioned it preseason. I figured I'd stick with them. Things happen for a reason, Greg. So maybe me's mentioning that. I mean, I didn't expect them to have the year they did, where Princeton pretty much was winning a lot of the Ivy League. They won the regular season Ivy League because they had guys who like grew a lot this season. Yale maybe had some struggles that you wouldn't have thought. They lost to like was it Vermont or had to get a last second shot to beat Vermont I think early in the year something like that. But they got some good players. Danny Wolf was wearing a face mask today. He was rebounding very well. Matt Noling, as I mentioned, with the buzzer beater. I'm not that high on Auburn. Like the one before the SEC tournament started, one quad one win. I like that they have two lineups they can throw in. I like Janai Broom, but like I think it's about guards, and I'm not really sure about their guards still. And we're at this point in March. I don't know. I'm going to go with Yale, which probably means Auburn will make the Final Four, but I'll stick with my guns with Yale there. Next one up, BYU and Duquesne. Duquesne won the A10 tournament. BYU, a little bit underseeded. The other people had some people had them at a 4 in their bracketologies. I had them at a 5, and I thought that was pretty solid. But 6 was a little bit lower than I thought. With a team again, Greg, who was rated highly in the net, but a 6 seed.
Yeah, so with the chatter, some people saying Duquesne probably should have been lower than 11. BYU probably should have been higher than a 6. I'll go with BYU, which inevitably means Duquesne's going to win this game.
Yeah, BYU for me as well. I won't take too much time, but I will say beware of teams like BYU just because if you start shooting poorly, I mean, maybe an upset could happen. I don't see it. They're much better than Duquesne. We move on to Illinois, Morehead State. Morehead State was the first team to clinch a bid, winning the OVC. Illinois won the Big Ten today.
I'll go Illinois. I don't really have anything else to say on that.
All right, so Washington State and Drake, a 7-10 matchup in the East region. I think this is one of the more interesting matchups we get to see in the first round. Greg, who are you going with?
Yeah, Washington State, kind of a little bit of a surprise out of the Pac-12. Drake obviously took, what would be Indiana State's spot by winning that title game. I will go with Washington State. This is going to be great podcasting at times.
Yeah,
I so far have all chalk besides Northwestern. You're right, Joe. I'm going to hate this bracket, which means it's just going to turn it in as is.
The way I'll put it, Greg, is some people are like, oh, you have like some years you'll have all 4 1s in your Final Four, and that never happens. But you're still like you're picking what you think is going to happen 1, but like 2, if you're playing bracket challenges, like it's not about getting every pick right. It's about giving yourself the best chance at having teams that go far and all that. So I'm with you. And I'm going Washington State in this game. I think Tucker DeVries is a very good player for Drake, but I do think Washington State can maybe slow him down. And I do think there is a Drake curse, obviously with all the sports teams he follows. So if he even tweets about Drake or something like this in this game, they're going to lose big time. So Washington State for me. Iowa State and South Dakota State. We have a coach going up against his former team here, Greg.
That's an interesting storyline. I don't think it's going to be an interesting game.
Yep.
Iowa State. So our first round picks for the East region are done. Now, Greg, I'm just going to tell you to just go, who you have winning each matchup. There's not much analysis we should probably do because, again, these are hypothetical matchups who may not matter. But, yeah, just go through the rest of your bracket. Who do you, second round, third round, lead 8, who do you have coming through? Oh boy! All right, let's do it. We'll do it live.
Yeah.
All right,
we'll put you on the stopwatch if you need it to help you make decisions.
All right, so UConn, Northwestern, I don't really have to think about. I'm going to take UConn. San Diego State, Auburn. I will take Jaden Ledee. I do really like Auburn, but I think he's going to give Auburn some fits. So there's my first, I guess, upset pick. Which there will be a lot more than that. Illinois, BYU. I think Illinois not only can hang with BYU's scoring, they may take away a little bit of, I just don't think BYU is going to have the, unless they shoot 55% from 3. So I'll take them. Iowa State, Washington State. I'll take Iowa State with that defense. UConn, San Diego State would be my Elite 8. I'll take UConn. Illinois, Iowa State. I think Illinois is going to be a tad much for that Iowa State defense, but all in all, a good season for Iowa State. Not what we expected at all, but I am still taking UConn to go back to the Final Four.
All right. That was actually really good, Greg. I was impressed how much time you did that in because you were making your picks live. For me, I have UConn beating Northwestern. I don't think that'll be much of a contest, to be honest. San Diego State beating Yale in my second round after Yale's advances. I do think San Diego State has some pretty good players. They can go on another mini run in this tournament, so I'll take them. I'll go Illinois over BYU. The shooting for BYU is great, but when it doesn't hit, it's not that great. So I would be I'm a little bit scared about that pick because of the defensive issues for Illinois, but I'll take Illinois. And then Iowa State to beat Washington State. I think they're much better than whoever they play in that second round. I think they'll be able to win. In the Sweet 16, I have UConn beating San Diego State. I think, again, this will be very tough to knock UConn out. They do have a tough bracket in different regards, but I think the tougher games will come in the Elite Eight, as usually happens. And then I have Illinois beating Iowa State. I think Illinois was a team we mentioned preseason is like, hey, they could win the final. They can go to the Final Four, maybe win the whole thing. Not as high because of the defense. And even if teams like, I'll make a point real quick that like even if teams aren't like the greatest rated in the net, like for efficiency, for defensive efficiency, like, oh, they can't win the tournament because their defense is that bad. Just remember Miami last year. Like, teams like that still advance and go to like pretty far in the tournament. So I'm concerned, but I'll take them to the Elite Eight, and then I'll have UConn over Illinois. I just don't think you can, it's hard to pick them with that defensive issue there. So both have UConn coming out of the East region. Greg, let's move down to the West region. I'm a guy who goes top bottom with my bracket. I don't know about you. I know some people like to do it in the order of the bracket. I'm a top bottom guy, so let's go.
Joe, I'm sorry. I remembered I texted this. I don't know if we actually said this. I think just before we move on, the East might be the toughest region. UConn got a little. They're the number one overall seed, but I mean they got Illinois, they got Iowa State. There's a lot going on in that bracket. I don't know if you want to give a general thought like that, but I just looking at that one, my blunt reaction is they're number one overall seed, but that underseeding of Iowa State isn't the most fair to them, and Illinois just won the Big Ten, so maybe a lighter Big Ten than usual, but still, we both have talked about the potential that Illinois has. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Just a general, what you?
Yeah, I think this is the second toughest bracket or region. I think the South is the toughest when you throw in Houston, Kentucky. Marquette, who we've talked about our issues with, and if Kolek's there, then he's good. But then you have, as your 4 seed, you have Duke. There was a lot of people who thought Duke might be a 3 seed, Kentucky would be a 4, so those two very good teams. Wisconsin, up and down year, but still like a team. If they went on a run and went to the Final Four, I don't think anyone would be like, oh, that's the most shocking thing in the world. Texas Tech was underseeded, they're the 6, and then you go to Florida, they were underseeded, they're the 7. Go up to 8 Nebraska. I mean, that's probably a fair seeding, but Texas A&M is a tough team. Like, can beat anyone, can lose to anyone. So that was my take. But this is still a very tough bracket. But I do think it's not tough for UConn. Maybe FAU gives them a game if they turn it on. But it's not tough for UConn in the East until the Elite Eight. I don't usually say this because it's March and anything can happen. I feel most comfortable about UConn making the Elite Eight than any other team in the bracket. And I know it's the number one overall seed, but I don't see the team that could knock them off in their region before that point, if that makes sense. All right, let's go to the West now, Greg. Let's start it off. We have, I guess Greg, we kind of forgot to do the playing games. Probably should do those too, real quick. That's great podcasting right there. So let's do that. Let's start off with we'll do Boise State and Colorado. 10 seeds.
I will take Colorado.
Yeah, I'm taking Colorado as well. As much as I love the Boise boys, I think.
But Boise State is underseeded, so don't be surprised if they win that game. Don't be surprised if they win the next one.
Yeah, true. All right, next number 10 seed matchups, which is very odd when the playing games are 10 seeds. I don't know if it's ever happened where both games are 10 seeded. Virginia and Colorado State, Greg.
I will take basketball to win and Colorado State to win.
Yeah, Virginia just can't hit shots as much as they used to, and they used to not hit a lot of shots anyway. Montana State and Grambling.
Let's go Grambling in their first appearance in the NCAA tournament, getting a win and getting those NCAA tournament units for their conference and their school.
All right, I'm going Montana State. That would be the 16-seeded matchup in the Midwest region. We'll move on to the last playing game. We have Howard and Wagner. This is the 16-seeded game in the West region, which we will be picking their next game right after this.
Let's go Howard.
Going Howard as well. Wagner only has 7 healthy players right now. That's be tough to win some games, so I'm going to go Howard.
Glad you let me know that before I picked the game.
That's true. Well, sometimes I gotta save some nuggets for myself. I don't know. North Carolina going up against the winner of the playing game we just talked about, Greg.
I'm going with North Carolina. I will be even as crazy as this year is, I will be surprised if past halftime we see any of these 1 seeds get tested.
Wow. Okay. Let's move on to Mississippi State. Maybe another team that was overseeded, going up against Michigan State. 9 seed. I'm sure some of the national media wanted them to be like a 5 seed after pushing them for the top 25 all year.
I will take Mississippi State's defense to decimate Michigan State, which inevitably means Michigan State and Tom Izzo are going to the Final Four.
I don't know how to phrase this right, but I'm going to say it. I think Mississippi State has the best player on the floor, Josh Hubbard. I know people might think I was going to say Julius Smith. I think
which is funny because in the beginning of the year the story was when's Tolu Smith going to be healthy, and Josh Hubbard was coming off the bench and he was one of the team's I don't think he was their leading scorer, but he was one of their like top 2 scorers coming off the bench. They moved into a starting lineup at some point. This team's dangerous.
Yeah, I think because of that, because they have the defensive mentality and they have a guy who can hit shots that are just crazy. Like, if the dude wasn't 5'11", he probably would have been recruited by a lot more schools if he was a little bit taller. So I'm going Mississippi State, although you could see, like, Tyson Walker go off and just go nuts for Michigan State, as you said, go on a run there. So moving on, we have St. Mary's and Grand Canyon.
I hate when they do this crap. Like, those are two. If Grand Canyon was honestly playing basically any of the other 5 seeds, I'd probably pick them, but I'm going to pick St. Mary's.
All right, I'm going to go St. Mary's as well. They recovered very well from the poor start to the season. I think they'll keep that momentum going for at least one more game. Alabama and Charleston.
I will take Alabama. I just think that Alabama offense I don't foresee this being a challenge for them.
No, I don't either. Mark Sears will have a pretty good game. I think if you have a point guard like that you can rely on, the chances of an upset are less, even though they do shoot a lot of threes. Moving on to Clemson. They made the tournament. Proud of Brad Brownell. Gets another year here. Probably overseeded with the 5 quad 2 losses, but that is okay. Going up against Greg's favorite team in the bracket, probably besides Dayton, New Mexico.
Brad Brownell goes down. New Mexico revenge tour. I love that they know that they were going to be out if they hadn't won the Mountain West tournament. So their revenge tour, not to sneak peek, but their revenge tour will last 1 game and then they will be done. But at least they will win 1 game and shove it in the community's face.
I'm going to Mexico too. I did not intend on taking Mountain West teams like I did with San Diego State and then New Mexico. We're up 2 for 2 already, I think. But they've got some real players. They got some good guards. That means a lot in March. And Clemson is just like they're not good. I don't think a 6 seed is like fair for how they have looked at times this year. So New Mexico, I think, is going to win that game. Moving on to Baylor and Colgate, 3 and 14.
Baylor doesn't get their teeth brushed. I don't know, something funny to say there. Baylor
gets the win there for me as well. Moving on to Dayton and Nevada. Greg has his favorite team in the bracket going up against a Mountain West team. It's going to break his heart.
If I wasn't married to a Dayton alum and it was head over heart, I'd be taking Nevada in this game, but I'll take Dayton against my better judgment.
You're allowed to use whatever metrics or whatever reasons you want to pick NCAA tournament games. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I'm going Nevada. I mentioned to Greg, I actually think this might be the easiest bracket when you think of things all considered. Then we're going to get to that in a second here when we have our thoughts about the whole thing, but I pretty much decided I was not picking Dayton no matter who they played, just based on how they've looked the last month and sometimes the offense that is going on there. But I see another team that I'll talk about when we talk about it later, who I also said I would never pick in the tournament either. So Arizona and Long Beach State. Now, Greg, have to talk about this real quick. Arizona gets the 2 seed. Obviously, last year they lost to the 2 seed, so that's going to be a story. Long Beach State fires Dan Munson. He ends up winning the conference tournament as like the 5 seed, I think. So he's now coaching in the NCAA tournament as a fired man. He's a dead man walking, and he's coaching. I don't know.
Hey, Arizona lost as a 2 seed last year, so what's one more game for Long Beach State?
Is he gonna do it?
I'll take Arizona.
Oh, boy. Thought he was going to get crazy here. Now, Greg is a person in the past, in bracket challenges, I don't believe he's ever taken a 16 seed to beat a 1 in the bracket challenge. He has taken a 15 to beat a 2. In some brackets. I think one year he took 1 or 2, even 2 of them, so it was kind of fun. I'm going Arizona. Some of the crazy upsets we've seen and the 15-16 line the last several years, I don't think are going to happen as much because so many bid stealers, or not bid stealers, that's the wrong word. A lot of these, underdogs won their conference tournaments. So this 15s and 16s are a little bit worse than usual. So I actually think, that part of it might not be too bad. So we have Arizona winning that game. Greg, why don't you take it away, finish off your West bracket real quick?
All right. So Carolina, Mississippi State. I will take Carolina, St. Mary's, and Bama. I will go against my better judgment, and I will take St. Mary's to make it to the Sweet 16, just like I thought they would in the preseason. Not how I thought they'd get there. New Mexico, Baylor. I will take Baylor. Baylor's another one of those teams that I can't quit. Arizona, Dayton. I'm sorry. I'm going to take Arizona. Although there has been some interesting stuff. Lloyd took Caleb Love off the floor, but with him, that might be the kind of thing that motivates him to have an electric March. You just never know.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us Sweet 16 matchups of Carolina and St. Mary's. I will take Carolina. I can quit the team at some point. Baylor and Arizona. I will go ahead and take Baylor. So that gives me Carolina and Baylor in the Elite Eight, and I will take Baylor to go to the Final Four.
Oh boy, you're gonna love my bracket here.
Baylor's losing their first game against Colgate now that they're in my Final Four.
Absolutely.
So sorry, Baylor fans.
You kiss of death right there. All right, so UNC Mississippi State. I have UNC winning. Mississippi State's a tough team. Probably keeps it close. A good game to watch. All that fun stuff. But UNC has too much talent. St. Mary's and Bama. I am going Alabama to win. I'm a little bit worried, Greg, to be honest. The Nate Oates stuff in March definitely doesn't help. But I think he can get that win, at least make the Sweet 16. I have New Mexico beating Baylor. I am concerned about the defense still. I don't want to be one of those guys who just does chalk. I do think there's some interesting thoughts around that. But I here's the thing: the defense for Baylor, it just hasn't been good, and I think they could be susceptible to lose early. I don't think it's Colgate, but I'll take New Mexico. Their guards are good, man. I'll be honest. If the bracket didn't set up this way, I would not have taken New Mexico. If you told me before the week I would take New Mexico, Greg, I would have said no way. But that's how it works, That's how the bracket works. Moving on, I have Arizona beating Nevada. I am still a big Caleb Love guy, player of the year in the conference, Pac-12 and everything. So that was really cool. I think that Nevada has a good chance to keep it close, but not going to be able to win. I have UNC beating Bama again. Nate Oates in March, don't really know about that. And North Carolina has all that talent. And then I have Arizona beating New Mexico. Sorry, Greg. They can only go so far. And I have Arizona playing UNC. I have UNC winning that game and going to the Final Four. So, Greg, we both have 2 1 seeds so far. That's fun. Oh, you don't?
No, remember I have Baylor.
Oh, that's right. You have Baylor. Sorry. That's right. I was teasing you about that. I am trying to keep everything in line here. All right. All right. So I have.
Hey, we're still talking about hypothetical matchups. So
that's very true. I have UConn and UNC. You have UConn and Baylor. Greg, let's move. Or any final thoughts on the West region?
Just get ready for the New Mexico revenge tour because they were told that they were going to be out if they didn't win yeah, you almost didn't have to pick New Mexico. So
what's funny is you said New Mexico revenge tour and then you haven't won in one game. I don't. Maybe it's not a revenge tour. It's one stop. Anyway, my final thoughts on this is I do think it's the worst region when you put it all together. North Carolina, obviously the weakest 1 seed. Arizona has had those games where they lose to teams they just shouldn't lose to, and in some regard everyone has that. It just seems like it happened a lot to Arizona. Baylor with that defense, I do actually kind of. In a weird way, I like that you took Baylor that far because they might actually be the best team in the region. I think the matchup might be worse for them in the second round. And then you move on, Alabama, their issues in March, not a bad team, issues in March. I'd mentioned, St. Mary's is a team that I did not personally like as much as you this year, Greg. A 5 seed is probably fine for seeding wise, but I'm not going to say there's some juggernaut of a 5 seed. And then Clemson and Dayton were 2 teams before the bracket even got out there. I said I was just not picking. There was almost no matchup I was going to be able to take them in. So all that going on, and we have Michigan State getting overseeded, and Mississippi State getting overseeded too. Should make for a fun one. So if you're going to take someone wild to make the Final Four, maybe that's the region. I don't know. Let's move on to the the South region, Greg. We have Houston as the number 1 seed going up against Longwood.
I will go Houston.
Houston, not getting crazy on us yet. Next up, Nebraska and Texas A&M. Now, I know Greg has had some some good feelings for both of these teams during the year in different regards. So I'm excited to see who he takes with this one.
I am gonna go with Texas A&M. I hate it for Nebraska. That this is who you got in the 8-9 matchup, but I think Texas A&M is a better team, even if they don't necessarily have a better resume. Being one's the 8 and one's the 9. I will go Texas A&M.
I have Texas A&M as well. It's they play well in games they need to play well in usually, and their guards are really good. Not shooting the ball from three very well unless they play Kentucky apparently, but this is a big stage. I think Wade Taylor can maybe have his light shine a little bit in this game. Moving on, we have Wisconsin and James Madison, the 5-12 matchup. James Madison, best record in the country.
I think this is going to be another trendy 5-12. I am going to still go Wisconsin. Maybe they've, can what they had going on. Obviously, they made a little run in the Big Ten tournament, so they're playing some good ball right now. But James Madison is coming in on, I think, like a 12 or 13 game win streak. They had a couple of really record in the country, but I'll go Wisconsin. But that's going to be a trendy 12-5 pick as well.
I'm going to go Wisconsin as well. They were battle tested. They had some downtime, so they're just so deep and so good. I will take them to win. I do think it'll be trendy because of James, more so about James Madison than it is about Wisconsin for people who follow the sport a little bit. But I could also see San Diego State people just don't like the Mountain West or St. Mary's or Gonzaga being smaller conference teams. There might be a lot of people who take all 4-12s this year, and I wouldn't hate it either. It's just I'm not picking. I think I picked all 4-5s, which we'll get to later, I guess. Spoiler. Duke and Vermont.
This also might end up being a trendy pick. I don't think as many people will pick it, but there's always, a 13 or a 14 that at least pushes a 3 or a 4. Obviously Vermont has some history. Duke, they weren't what they were supposed to be. They're a little Kansas-y. They've had, some players step up that have given the team a little bit more depth. But I'm going to go Duke in this one. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was a close game. If you see a Vermont plus like 14 or something, that might be a nice little bet to make there.
Very true. I'm going Duke as well. Not a team I'm really high on this year. We talked about their issues all year long about who's going to step up besides Filipowski. And guys have at different times. Just no one as consistent as you would like to see. So I'm going to go Duke for this game, but just kind of thoughts on the future there. Next up, we have Texas Tech as the 6th seed and NC State as the 11th seed. Getting into the tournament by winning the ACC championship, I didn't think I'd see that coming into this week, Greg.
I will go NC State. This is, I guess, my biggest upset pick I think that I've picked so far. I'm not considering New Mexico that much of an upset. NC State's playing some really good ball. I don't know that Texas Tech has seen anybody like DJ Burns that I can think of, and they're going to have fun dealing with him. So let's just go NC State to be that team that just got hot at the right time.
Hey, nothing would make me happier than having DJ Burns go far. The guy who's my favorite player in college basketball, not on one of my favorite teams. And I don't know. This Texas Tech team is good. I mean, they're really good. I like them a lot. Pop Isaacs, Joe Toussaint, good guard play. As a Kentucky fan, we'll get Kentucky's pick next. I was saying this is like the 6th seed. I don't think I wanted to play the most. Like BYU, I know the perimeter defense stinks and they shoot well. I don't know. I just something about them. I think that would be win. And Clemson, I was like, please give me one of those two instead, especially Clemson. So I think Texas Tech wins that game. And then we have Kentucky and Oakland.
I am gonna take Kentucky. My brother-in-law Joe in a group chat with Joe and I is worried that Kentucky is going to lose this game. I'm not. So go ahead and throw your house savings on Oakland is what that means. Mm-hmm. But I'll take Kentucky.
Definitely some concerns there after the loss in the SEC tournament and some of the recent NCAA tournament history for Kentucky. But I'm going with them in the first round. They have guys who can make shots. I think they can lock in defensively, and they actually play better defensively on the road or neutral sites than they do at home, which is really weird. Don't usually see that. And there's I'll just put it this way. I'm not the guy who blames the officials a lot, but like there was some suspect officiating where one of the officials called 22 had 22 calls that includes out of bounds and that includes foul calls, possession, all that stuff. All 22 went in favor of Texas A&M in that game they lost. Just stuff you got to look into if we're going to be looking into kids shaving points.
Forget the overall stats, Joe. There were some calls that were just blatant. And
Yeah.
Joe's a Kentucky fan, so obviously you might take some heat for, whatever. There were some calls that were just, that's a foul. Like, at least 3 or 4 times, Joe and I were texting back and forth, with our group of friends. That's a foul. Joe said today it is, So
that's how it goes. So they've been so good over the last several weeks, and Texas A&M guys, they were just shooting out of their minds. I don't want to spend too much time on this game that already happened when we're not talking about any other ones, but I have a good feeling about at least getting out of the first round for Kentucky. Next up, we have Florida, a little bit underseeded, going up against Greg, whoever you had winning Boise State and Colorado. I think you had Colorado.
For the record, I have Colorado winning that game, but I would probably be picking Boise or Colorado to beat Florida. I know they came along, right around conference season. They started getting on our radar, and it's a good season for Todd Golden out there. I was a big fan of him when he was at San Francisco. They had some fun players on those teams, but I just don't like those. Are Boise and Colorado are 2 teams that I have a little bit of an affinity for, not like fandom, but like I just liked them this year. So I'll take specifically Colorado, but if Boise happens to win that playing game, I probably would be picking them anyway. So that is who I'm taking, Colorado specifically in that game.
I'm going Florida to win, and I'll tell you right now. Do not go back and rewatch their starting center's injury in the SEC tournament. It is disgusting. Mitch, I can't say his last name. Mitch Hogan, whatever. I can't say it. He was good for Florida. They're a very good rebounding team. Now they do have depth, but if he were healthy, I'd be taking him Sweet 16. He's not healthy. That makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm still going to go Florida. I really do like Walter Clayton. I was telling Greg, I was really listening to our first podcast ever to clip something up for us for social media, and I just, we talked about Walter Clayton as being one of the top 3 transfers in the SEC, and like, oh, it's who cares, whatever. But the other 2 were Dalton Connect and Grant Nelson. So I think Florida wins that one. Let's go to Marquette, Western Kentucky. Any magic there, Greg?
No, I'm gonna go Marquette. Now, Joe, I don't know if we know what's going on with Tyler Kolek when he missed the Big East tournament. So his health in question, for me that wouldn't move the needle. But if Shaka decides he wants to give him this game off, that's playing with fire, because we've seen 2 over 15 quite a few times. But it's just going to depend on what Shaka thinks is best for the team holistically.
Yeah, it seemed like he could, in a dire situation, could have cleared. He wasn't technically cleared to play for the Big East tournament, but I don't know. I did think about this one a lot, just because of the injury to Kolek, but they're still a good team. Like I've talked about Cam Jones a lot. I really like him as a player, so I'm going to go Marquette. But this might be one, if you're like a feeling risky guy, like you're right, like if the Kolek injury comes into it, maybe you take the chance on this 15 over 2, because I think that's probably the most likely upset potential is this one. All right, Greg, finish off the South bracket for yourself.
All right, so my first game is Houston, Texas A&M, which is actually a rematch. They played back in December. And Houston did win that game, but it was very close. It was 70-66. But I will take Houston to win again. That gives us, the next game would be Wisconsin and Duke. And I'm a little uneasy about both of these teams. Just all things considered, I just feel like I'm less uneasy about Duke at the moment. I took a look at that 4-13 with Duke, and I took a look at that 5-12 with Wisconsin, and I thought about picking, one of those as an upset. Ultimately decided to go Wisconsin and Duke, and of those 2 teams, both wavering on, I'm going to go ahead and take Duke. That brings us to in my bracket, NC State and Kentucky. I will take Kentucky without hesitation. Although if that matchup were to happen, it would be interesting to see how Cal attacks that. I will take Marquette to beat. In my bracket, it would be Colorado. I will take Houston to go and beat Duke. I think that's a nice Sweet 16 matchup for them. I think they breeze through that if that is in fact what happens. I will take Kentucky to beat Marquette. And Joe's worst nightmare is about to happen. I will take Kentucky to go to the Final Four and beat Houston. So, Joe, he has recently said that none of his friends are allowed to bet on Kentucky. To be fair, I'm
Nope.
not necessarily betting on Kentucky.
This doesn't
I'm
count.
just picking them in my tournament challenge, although these are for money. So I don't know.
This
Jim, I don't know. But
this doesn't count as betting on the team. I will
okay.
say, I here's the thing. I think you can see the potential of it happening, but that doesn't count. I think now I'm cheering for your bracket more than my own, which will be fun. I'll either maybe win some money or I'll be high fiving you while you win some money for your bracket. Because I don't know how many people trust Kentucky. But let's get into mine real quick, Greg. I have Houston beating Texas A&M. The concern for me with Houston is the depth. They've had 3 different role players go down this year with season-ending injuries. Their guys play a lot of minutes. That concerns me a little bit, but they're so freaking good. Houston, I think, wins that game. I do have Duke over Wisconsin. Again, this is a tough one to pick, but I do think those flashes of Duke guards showing up at different times maybe could be good for them now. Like have McCain step up or Foster. I mean, or Roach. Someone could step up and help out Filipowski, I think, get through this round. And then we have Kentucky, Texas Tech. I'm telling you, I thought about taking Texas Tech to win this game. I really like the guard play. I think they could put Kentucky into some fits defensively, and that scares me. But the way Kentucky's been playing, I'll take Kentucky to win that one. And I think the shot making matters, and I think that'll be huge for them. Again, Florida would have taken them to the Sweet 16 in this scenario if starting center didn't go down. I'll take Marquette. Tyler Kolek hopefully plays in the scenario, and I do, like I said, I do like Cam Jones either way. And they've won some games without him this year too, so that is definitely worth noting. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the Sweet 16. I'm going to go Houston over Duke. Again, depth concerns me for Houston, but Duke, I can't really pick them to go this far with all the issues we've stated all year, Greg. And then UK beating Marquette. I can't pick Shaka Smart to go that far. As much as Kentucky's defense and untimely losses have kind of messed with me. I don't know if I could pick Shaka Smart's team to go very far. And I wouldn't have picked them to go to Sweet 16 had Florida's center not gotten injured. So that takes me to Houston, Kentucky. I'm going to go Houston. That gives me 3 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. I do not like that. But, Greg, as we talked about, there was a drop-off this year from teams from Team 4 to whoever else in the field. So this might be the year that we get a lot of 1 seeds because of that and because of the upsets in conference tournaments. It's just going to be an easier path. I like Jamal Shed. I think point guard play matters. I think he might be the best point guard in the country in terms of running a team and defensively and distributing the ball. So I'm going Houston. I'm not happy about the 3-1 seeds so far. That just gives me opportunity to get a little crazy with the next bracket. But any thoughts on the South bracket or my picks, Greg?
I think that this kind of year, with as crazy as it's been, you having 3-1 seeds so far in the Final Four might be good value, and I'll talk a little bit more about good value when we get to the next region. I think people that kind of casually watch the sport might just think, yeah, this is going to be the year everything's going to be crazy, and ultimately you get a lot of points for picking your Sweet 16 right, your Elite Eight right, your Final Four right, Champion's worth a ton. So that's where most of the points come from. A lot of people are going to focus on, well, how many games did I get right in the first round, and that's important. You don't want your Elite Eight team going out in the first round, but there's something to be said about the value of what Joe's got so far. I am just honestly trying to stick with teams that I like, but the next round I might just have to pick value. So I don't know if you got any other comments, but we can if you don't, we can skip on down to the Midwest.
I just this bracket as a Kentucky fan scares the hell out of me. The second round matchup scares the hell out of me with Texas Tech. Hopefully NC State wins, but even then, I mean, that's not like it's a bad team. But I don't know.
Okay, so just hypotheticals. We're talking about the tournament. You can pick UK up the 3 seed, and you can drop them in any other. They got to stay a 3 seed.
Mm-hmm.
You can drop them in any other bracket. Where do you put them? So you got three choices. Not a wild amount of choices, but
I would say the three in the West region. I mentioned I thought that
that's
was
where that's where
easiest.
I figured you'd put them.
I do like your pick of Baylor to the Final Four, despite me having them lose to New Mexico. But so like I do think it's a good spot where a team can go on a run because yeah, North Carolina's the worst one seed. Arizona has their timely losses, like almost as bad as Kentucky in that regard, and how many losses they have that it just seem like how did they lose that one? Why did they lose that game? And yeah, I don't know. I think the other brackets maybe are a little bit tougher. So I will say that one. But it scares me. I'm excited. I'm kind of like already anxious about these matchups. Like Kentucky basketball is the one. Like mostly I watch the games and it's like it's still very analytical what I'm thinking. I try to be objective about it, but I am like palms are sweating, and I feel it, man. This bracket's gonna be a lot of fun in a good way for everyone else, and a bad way for me. So let's move
Your,
on
your
to
knee your knees weak and your arms are heavy too.
Mom Spaghetti, baby.
Mhm.
Let's move on to the Midwest region, Greg. Starting off, we both have Purdue winning the first game, right? Or are they going to get upset by 16 again?
So this is what I'm glad you phrased the question that way. This is going to be, and I'm not just talking about your first round game. Purdue is going to be a great value pick if you're in a tournament challenge. A lot of people hey, the roster's basically last year. It's basically the same players. You know, a lot of people are going to pick them. Hardly anyone. Yes, you will get some people that are going to pick them to lose this game. They're like, haha, that'd be hilarious. This is picking them to go deep, and obviously if they do, might be enough just with the chaos that might happen in the other regions to get you in the top two or three in your tournament challenge. Now, Joe knows that sometimes when we play fantasy football, that the trends go one way, and everybody picks. He talks about the value of running backs, and everybody starts picking running backs. So now that I've put it out into the atmosphere, now that I've said Purdue might be a good value pick, everybody's going to pick Purdue, and it's going to lose its value. But I'm taking that's a long-winded way of saying you might want to look at them. Not even if you're that confident in them going deep, it just might be worth the value there. But this particular game, I'll take Purdue.
Okay, I'm taking Purdue as well. I do think they can get past the first round this year after everything that happened last year, and a lot of motivation to stay focused for this one. Next,
Well, just remember, Joe, no one seed has lost to a 16 2 years in a row. So we still have a barrier to break.
that's true. And hey, the only time a team's lost to a 16, the next year they won the national championship. So that could be the move for Purdue. Utah State and TCU in the 8-9 game. Utah State underseeded. TCU I think was probably fairly seeded, maybe a little bit lower. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of stinks because I think if TCU was a 10 seed, not playing against a Utah State team that probably should be a little bit higher, I probably would take them. Although I say that, and what that could look like is Utah State is like a 7 and TCU is a 10, and I'd still be taking Utah State. But I will take Utah State in this game.
I'm taking TCU. I think I took too many Mountain West teams before this. I'm cutting myself off. I'm taking TCU. More, I think experience. I want to see Jameer Nelson have a March moment. That'd be really cool in a throwback, making us all feel old as well. So TCU. Gonzaga and McNeese State. We have Will Wade in the tournament again.
This is going to be, I think, another trendy 5-12. So I think 3 of the 5-12s are going to be trendy. I would think most people are going to pick St. Mary's over Grand Canyon, but in this case, this one, I just McNeese did a lot of winning this year. Gonzaga is down for people. I'm not saying I'm picking it because of value, but I'm going to pick Gonzaga and sneak peek. I might be taking them to win their next game too.
Ooh. Okay, I'm taking Gonzaga as well. I've been pretty high on them. I mean, the depth concerns are still there, but moving Dusty Stromer to the bench, I think, has made things a little bit better because now they have a guard coming off the bench, and they have a forward, more forwards in the starting lineup. I think it helps them a lot. So I'm going Gonzaga. I'll take Gonzaga in the first one. McNeese, I think I'm with you. I think this will be a popular 12-5 matchup, but I think Gonzaga did put things together nicely at the end of the year, despite not winning the WCC, which I will be buying you a T-shirt no matter what you say because I lost a bet. So, all right, Kansas and Samford. Kansas has some injury issues, but hoping to get healthy for this game. Samford, I think it was their first tournament in a long time.
Here it is, Joe. This is it. This is where the chaos starts.
Don't do it because I did it too.
Stanford over Kansas. Kansas, even if all their players are back, they're not going to be completely healthy. And it's funny because I feel like a pod or two ago I said we could look up and this Kansas team could be in the Final Four, and they just happen to be going up against a team that just win ball games. And sometimes that's meaningful. So I'll go Stanford. This is my big upset pick. There's a couple others that I looked at as possibles. I've zoned in on this one. This one might also be trendy, just because there's been a lot of stuff said about Kansas and how they're short. Obviously a lot of the analysis is similar because we've got a pretty large sample size on these teams. But I'll go Samford. It sounds like Joe might be joining me.
Yes, it's Samford. I mentioned, I think a week or two ago, I'm much more closer to picking Kansas to to not win their first game than to make it to the Sweet 16 maybe, or Elite 8. I don't know what the exact cutoff point was, but I'm sticking with it. Samford is a very good team. Kansas, Kevin McCullar has played since his injury, but he sat out the Big 12 tournament, which scares me that he played and then had to be knocked out of the tournament. Then they also I've heard people say even if he plays, he's not going to be 100%. That's what's scaring a lot of people with this. And then Hunter Dickinson with that shoulder injury, I just think it's going to be hard to shoot. And they already have him clogging the paint. They do move him on the perimeter like we talked about. But if you have Hunter Dickinson who's not shooting very well, because even if, if he doesn't shoot well, if it's just hard to raise his arms to shoot, think about the paint clogging they're going to have with KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson. It's too much. So I'm going Samford to win. It's going to be, I think, a popular pick of people who follow college basketball, but not a popular pick if you haven't watched. Kansas is 4. Yeah, they're definitely going to go. So moving on. We have Oregon, South Carolina as the 6th seed, Oregon as the 11th seed. Oregon got in via winning the Pac-12 tournament. Never sleep on Dana Altman.
I will go South Carolina. I'll give no analysis because this I don't want to pick this game. Honestly, if I could just not pick this game, I just wouldn't.
I didn't want to.
I don't know what to think about this one.
I didn't want to pick this one either. I did go Oregon, and I think the reason was I do like Lamont Paris and what he's done. I like the defensive intensity they bring, but there's points where they just can't score, and that scares me. And I'll trust Oregon. I'll trust Oregon. I'll trust Dana Altman too. Moving on, let's go to the Creighton and Akron game. I
will take Creighton. I know Joe talked about how, especially lately, they've come on strong. They were a hot pick in the preseason. I will take Creighton, but I wouldn't be surprised if not Joe picks Akron, but he has some things to say about Akron. Joe did bring up a little bit of Akron. I don't know if it was in the preseason or at some point. I know for a fact that you mentioned them at some point.
I'm sure I did. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I'm going Creighton. I mentioned I really do like this Creighton team this year. Texas and going up against the winner of Virginia or Colorado State, Greg.
I will take Texas. I don't think Virginia is winning that game, but even then, I like Texas against either of these two teams. Another team that, we early in the season, it was hey, they're really only ranked because of their name and who they are. And then they kind of put something together towards the end, so I'll take them to at least win this game.
They say March is about guard play, and if you wanted to take guards sight unseen, or if you just want to say hey, this team's 2 lead guards, I would take Texas over 90% of the field. Is that crazy to say, Greg? If you have Hunter and you have Asmus as your 2 guys, I just think I would take them over almost any team. Again, 90%, not all the teams, but their guard play is incredible. The other stuff, not always incredible. But I'm going Texas. I'm going Texas to win that game. I have them beating Colorado State, so I don't know. I think the threat is there for them.
But before we go on to the next game, you mentioned the guards, but Dylan Dessou's been playing out of his mind lately. And don't forget, they got a former 5-star in. And I always want to mix up his name with someone else, but it's Dylan Mitchell, correct?
Yes.
I always want to mix up his name with someone else, but I think it's because Trey Mitchell went a similar didn't he have a okay? I think that's why I have a little bit of connectors there, but they've got some talent. I'm not going to pick them to win the next game, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was an interesting one. So you
True.
want to move on to the
So
one that everybody's going to pick.
So, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. Number 2 seeded Tennessee and number 15 St. Peter's. St. Peter's, you have the chance to become my best friend after we were enemies for so long. After I have to deal with my brother buying a St. Peter's shirt just to rub it into my face. You have a chance to redeem it. I will buy my St. Peter's shirt the day you win this tournament game and redeem yourselves for beating Kentucky by beating Tennessee. But I'm going Tennessee.
For context, most of our friend group does not like Tennessee. I don't think we've really gotten into that on this podcast at all. We're not fans of Tennessee, especially like Tennessee fans. I don't really have a deep-seated hate, but I ride with my boys. So, Joe, can we get a commitment from you if St. Peter's wins this game, even though you have to deal with that St. Peter's, Kentucky, you'll go out and buy yourself a St. Peter's shirt?
If they win this game, I will do it. First of all, I'm buying you a shirt too. I know we talked about that bet, so I'll pay that off. But I'm a big fan of like random college T-shirts. You know, I loved what was the name of the store? Stephen Barry's was the name of the store, I think. Just buying all this random college T-shirts. We always try to go as many college basketball, college games as we can, and I'd wear it and probably hate myself while doing it. But they have a chance to redeem themselves, and I'll help their athletic department budget by buying a shirt. But Tennessee for me, Tennessee for you. Let's move on. Greg, go through the rest of your Midwest bracket and get us to the Final Four.
All right. That's awfully presumptuous of you to say that I was going to take Tennessee. I didn't actually say who I was going to pick, but you're right. All right. So that I've got Purdue, Utah State. I will take Purdue, not necessarily playing on that value. I just like that. I just like that matchup because I picked Gonzaga to beat McNeese and Samford to pick Kansas. I believe you picked the same thing. I think we have the same second round matchup there, but I'll take Gonzaga to win that one and a weird path to the Sweet 16 again. I think they've got like an 8-year streak going on, and it would be a weird way to get there, but it looks like that might, if things work out the way I think they are, that would continue. So that gives me next game is South Carolina Creighton. I will take Creighton. Sometimes I worry about the offensive firepower that South Carolina team has. Tennessee, Texas. I think that would be a fun game to watch, but I will take Tennessee in that one. That gives us Purdue, Gonzaga in my Sweet 16. I will take Purdue. Tennessee, Creighton. If we weren't doing this live, I would probably really struggle with this game, but I will take Tennessee. That gives me Purdue, Tennessee, and this is a hypothetical matchup that I just think would be extremely interesting to watch, just with the Dalton Connect and the Zach E and the Braden Smith and the Zakai Ziegler, and there's so much about this game that would be interesting, which means we won't get it. But I will take Purdue to win that game and go to the Final Four.
You mentioned that, Greg. This game already happened. Purdue, Tennessee already happened.
That's right.
They did. 71-67 win for Purdue. That was before Zakai Ziegler was like really bad. He was playing, but he wasn't like really back. So it was a very good game. We could see that. They also played Gonzaga. So there's a chance that they could be playing a couple teams they already played this year in this bracket. All right, so I'll go through mine really quickly. I'm going to have Purdue beating TCU in their next matchup. I do think Purdue can get to the second weekend this year. I think that's the guard play is better. Moving on, Gonzaga beating Samford. I think it's the easy pick given the situation. The depth scares me a little bit, but again, I think it's a little bit better than we thought at the start of the season. So it has gotten better as time has gone on. Moving on to Oregon and Creighton. I have Creighton winning that one. I was going to take Creighton no matter who won that first game. I'm not seeing it with the Oregon South Carolina matchup, as you said earlier, Greg. Texas and Tennessee, the Rick Barnes special. Another reason to watch this game. I'm going Tennessee. I think he gets some revenge on his former team, but it is very much a Rick Barnes in March type of thing. You have to worry about that stuff. I think Rick Barnes is a great coach. I'm going to stick with it. Tennessee wins. So that sets up Purdue, Gonzaga for me as well, Greg. And I'm going Gonzaga. I can't pick all chalk. I've already have 3 1 seeds in the Final Four. My brain is broken thinking about Purdue making a Final Four, even though they are good. Just the way things have gone in the history of the tournament the last 5 or so years. Purdue has lost to a lot of teams they shouldn't have lost to in the tournament. Um, Braden Smith is injured. He's playing through it. He's been injured a couple times these last couple weeks, so hopefully he's healthy, he can play. But I just got to know that going in. And I like the starting lineup that we know the rotations are set for Gonzaga because they don't have anyone else. So that again, that's good. And they also, I think the other key to this game, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on a hypothetical matchup and everything, but they have a lot of big guys that can throw at Zach Edey too. Like that one part where they do have depth is big guys, and they have big guys who can get him into foul trouble. I think so. Gonzaga makes the Elite Eight for me, which takes me to Creighton in Tennessee. I'm taking Creighton again. Really love this team. The way they play, I think they can beat just about anyone. So I will take Creighton, and then I have Creighton beating Gonzaga to make the Final Four and make it so it's not just all one seeds, but also Creighton fits a lot of metrics that you want to see for a team to go far in the tournament as well. So I'll go Creighton. So Greg, why don't you tell us what your Final Four is? Remind everyone what your Final Four is since we're doing this for a while, and then make your picks for the Final Four in the championship game.
So I have UConn Baylor on one side, and I have Kentucky Purdue on the other. I will take UConn to beat Baylor, and I will take Purdue to beat Kentucky. So just for review, I've got 1 seed UConn, 3 seed Baylor, 3 seed Kentucky, 1 seed Purdue, and I do end up with 2 1 seeds in my title game. I will pick UConn to win the whole thing. I think that is going to be a popular pick, but it's what I think is going to happen, and throw value out the window. It's hard for me to not pick what I think is going to happen. One thing I do want to say before you make your picks, Joe, there always is that tiebreaker. How many points are going to be in most places will have that. You're going to want to put that number a little bit higher than you have in past years. There's been a lot more scoring. So I feel like I probably would have put something. It's whether you get in the one I'm looking at right now is what's the combined total. Sometimes you'll get predict the final score, and I feel like in the past I would have put 71-65 or 68-62 or 72-67, something like that. I'm putting a total of 158, so that's got the game very close to the 80s. I just think that you're again, for value, just with the way some of these teams play, you might think about putting it a little bit higher than you have in the past.
I don't know how I feel about this this issue, Greg. I think I would go lower because I think people will expect it to be high scoring this year, and because it's still games in football stadiums right now. We know the shooting can sometimes be off, so I would say lower. I think if you're trying to win the ESPN sweepstakes, definitely don't do this. But if you're in a bracket pool with 20 of your friends, I might just put 1 point. It's by who's closest, right? So maybe do the Price is Right thing, do the dollar. All right, so my Final Four, I have UConn, UNC, Houston, and Creighton. I'm going to take UConn to beat UNC. I think UNC's luck runs out there. I do think very talented team, but UConn has just been so good this year. Houston and Creighton. I am taking Creighton to beat Houston. This team is it's a lot of fun. I like them a lot. And Greg, for that reason, I'm taking Creighton to win the whole god dang thing. This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I almost won a bracket pool last year because I took Texas when no one at 1% of brackets picked Texas as a 2 seed. It was weird. But they have split the games with UConn this year. They've looked very good. I've been very impressed with how Stephen Ashworth has come on. I think the metrics with the Ken Pom fit what you want to do if you're going to pick a champion right now. Problem is, I think since 1983, no team who has lost their first game in a conference tournament has won the championship. So we're breaking trends. 16 seeds are beating ones here. I just love what this team brings in terms of Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, Stephen Ashworth. I think his shooting's been pretty clutch for them at different times. And then you also have, so the guard play is all there with those guys, right? And then you have Ryan Kalkbrenner defending the paint, protecting the rim. I don't know. I decided to be weird this year. I like him a lot. I'm taking him. The metrics fit. I just thought, screw it. Let's do it. I'm taking Creighton.
To be fair, Joe, I can't tell you how many things I've seen, how many different like groups I've seen say well, since '85, this is a specific one I remember. Since '85, every national title winner has been at least in the semifinals of their conference tournament. So here's who you're picking to. There's a laundry list. There is a scroll of these like things that are they're like statistical, whatever. They're not predictive. Every year we break one of these.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether it's the Ken Palm top this, whether it's that. If you're picking based on that, you might as well just pick Purdue to lose their first game because you're picking based on previous years giving you this year's results. Creighton making their first Final Four, that would be cool. I'm always a fan of things that haven't happened before. Obviously, 1,000 years from now, we'll be looking at this probably the same tournament that we're looking at now.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't necessarily be fun anymore. But I that was the other thing that you brought to my mind is there's that stat about like how teams fare when they're entering their first Final Four, and that would be working against Creighton. That if they make their first Final Four, you usually don't see that team win the national title. So, but those things don't mean anything this year. Like, it's not like we're talking about the stock market and we're talking about, well, if a company does this and they're starting, that's not what we're talking about. This sport is unpredictable. No one's ever had a perfect bracket. It's very likely that no one ever will, so it's hard enough to pick the right Final Four teams, more or less pick every single stinking game. There's too many permutations. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with it. There's hardly anything that you could have thrown at me and said, I would have been like, Joe, you're crazy. I do want to point out that Joe's been consistent. I do remember within the last couple of weeks him making similar commentary about Creighton. So, when what we've said is we're looking for depth and we're looking for teams that are playing their best ball, and he's been on it with Creighton. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with picking them. And anybody that if you're picking in your tournament challenge, anybody that tells you you're dumb, just wait till like 3 o'clock on the first day
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
look at their bracket.
Right. Again, I like Creighton's to make up this year, and again, at first Stephen Ashworth didn't work out, but he really has worked on it. I do also love the path for them too. Like we mentioned, the second round game, I just can't see one of those teams beating them, the South Carolina or Oregon. And then you got Rick Barnes maybe in the Sweet 16 would be the best possible matchup. And then you have maybe Purdue or Gonzaga or Kansas. And I just think they can win those games. So I like the path. I like the team. I like the metrics. I like the way they play. There is also some fun things with the path that I have picked them to go through, Greg. Creighton would play Oregon in the second round of my bracket, right? Dana Altman, coach of Creighton for all those years ago up until 2010. In the Elite Eight, they'd be playing Gonzaga. So Ryan Nebhard transfers from to Gonzaga from Creighton. So we'll see that revenge right there and get see if he can get the job done. And then again, hypothetical, won't spend too much time. They get to play UConn, best of 3 series for them, right? So that'd be a lot of fun too. So I'm having fun with it. I understand it won't be a popular pick. I understand that if Creighton loses the first weekend, I'm done. But hey, we've seen 16 seeds win. We've seen 15 seeds win. I'm a big fan of taking 1 seeds. I'm not to win the whole thing because it does happen a lot. So Greg, I'm not sliding you for taking a 1 seed either. I think it's very. I might actually think your bracket might be more accurate when we're all said and done than mine after doing this. But I like my bracket. Screw it. I hated it at first. Now I like it. We're going back and forth. Greg, any final thoughts on the NCAA tournament before we go into it this week?
Not on that, but I did live just get a text in our Dayton group, and our dear friend Cameron Dickens, his wife, reminded everyone that today marks 2 years ago that the Peacocks beat UK to go to the Elite Eight. So poor Cameron, who's a UK fan like Joe, just trying to celebrate Christmas Eve going into Christmas and can't even. You want to talk about past results and I mean. That's I don't have any analysis on that other than she's excellent at trolling him sometimes.
Yeah, that's oh boy. So I get more text when Kentucky loses than anything in my life. Good or bad, anything in my life happens doesn't matter. If Kentucky loses, I will get texts from people from grade school I haven't talked to since grade school. Stuff like that. It's just the dumbest thing. So definitely feel Cameron on that. Hey, it's the responsibility you have when you cheer for a team like that. You just gotta have to go through it. But my final thoughts is I'm excited for March Madness. I do think there might be a lot more chalk than most years, like we talked about, but there'll still be some fun things along the way. And at the end of the day, I think we like seeing upsets early and see how far the guys can go. But at the end of the day, Greg, we're going to see some pretty big heavyweight matchups if any of this holds true. Like, I'm looking at these Elite Eight, possible Final Four matchups, possibly seeing like your championship game. I think these are like really good matchups that I'm excited to watch. So a lot of fun there. It doesn't always happen that sometimes the upsets are great and you're following the story and then you get to the Final Four and it's like, oh, well, they got killed by 20. This time I think we're going to have a lot of good games, so I'm excited for that. I will remind everyone, we will be back next week. We'll probably record it, I would assume, on Monday because we're watching all the games on Sunday night. On Monday, we'll get it up as soon as possible. We will talk about all the stuff that happened. We'll recap it. I don't know if we'll go game by game because that would take a while, but we'll generally recap it. And then we will make our picks based on the actual matchups that come through at that point for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. And we will also be doing the coaching carousel, which has already started off pretty high flying already, I would say. A lot of big jobs open, even Juwan Howard. We'll get into more details about that and who might fill those roles because, Greg, in the dumbest thing ever, the transfer portal is open tomorrow for college basketball. So you get penalized if you made the NCAA tournament because you got to focus on actually winning basketball games. So that'll have to change. But one final reminder to like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.